So we're going to go ahead and get going, and we're going to have a really good conversation. And one of the things I love is the videos, and I have I have not watched this ahead of time, so I always like being surprised by what's in there. All right, here we go. Welcome to another Autonomy Quest. Thank you so much for joining us. For our student spotlight this evening, it is Karl. Hi, Karl. How are you?
Hi, Ashley. I'm doing well,
Very
and
good. Thank you. Thanks for joining us.
I'm excited because I started Autonomy 1 year ago, but I'm also participating in this current season, and that's why we're stopping at 8:45 because lecture two's tonight. So
That's it. Yes. So I have a couple of notes that I'm going to go over, and then we're going to go straight into Karl's video, which I'm very excited to see. So what I want to cover is that the enrollment process to get into autonomy. So you're here with Autonomy Quest, and this is going to help make informed decisions on if autonomy is right for you. You can join, you can enjoy the student spotlight, interact with the other students, Q&A. And then what you're going to want to do is book a blueprint call for success. So once you have your blueprint call and you believe that autonomy is the right fit for you, and we believe that it is, then you are going to receive your offer letter. And then once you get your offer letter, we get you connected into the community and you start attending lectures and all the other amazing events that our community has to offer. So without further ado, I want to go ahead and get into Karl's video. Here we go. My favorite part, screen share.
that's okay. I can narrate it. But I was gonna say, I think it's probably a few clips from my vlogs throughout the season, and then some of my participation in class
The
too.
landing page Ashley is set up.
Yep,
Okay.
I'm going to the landing page because I had it saved here. We're doing it live.
Yeah,
So,
now that you mention that, and Hannah's here too, but like a lot of my favorite experiences from the course were in a program called Do It Live, where you get to host the Autonomy podcast for a week. And, obviously you make a bit of an outline of what you want to cover, but autonomy is just a perfect place where you're going to actually get to practice those skills. And, dozens of people show up and they're just staring at you while you're trying to make a video play. And that's a useful experience. Nobody learns to ride a bike with no training wheels and no accidents, but you want to do it before you're on the racetrack. And
yes,
that experience
absolutely.
is what you get in autonomy.
Yeah. Okay. So I think we're ready. Everybody, Karl, if you can see and hear this when we get going, just give me a thumbs up.
Karl, how are you doing this afternoon?
I'm doing pretty good.
Where do you live? What do you do?
I currently live where I grew up here in Harford County, Maryland, not too far from Pittsburgh. I went to grad school at CMU, where I studied human computer interaction, which is just a fancy way of saying making computers easier to use and not only for super technical types, you know.
Well, I mean, it says a lot
So,
about you
yeah,
already. Carnegie Mellon is where nerdy people go to do
yeah,
nerdy things. And it's
yeah.
a very prestigious school in Pittsburgh. And there's a whole section of Pittsburgh called Carnegie or Carnegie, as we have to say in Pittsburghese.
Right. I
Did you
guess
get to
these robber baron types did something good with their money, so I
yeah, they
appreciate
made
that.
some libraries too
Yeah.
along the way. So what did you do with the skills out of CMU?
Yeah. I actually graduated in the recession of 2008, 2009. And I thought, I can go, like live with my parents and email companies hoping to get a job in a year or two. Or I can just move to San Francisco and like network my way in. So that's what I did. I'd worked with Salesforce in my grad program. So they'd flown us out to San Francisco, and I just
Mhm.
liked that vibe. I'd grown up on the East Coast and was ready for just to like, Maryland's also a very small state. So it's like I felt like I'd be trapped here my old life if I didn't get away. So went to San Francisco. Through my tennis team, I got a job at eBay, who'd actually worked with one of my professors, and they put me on a great project. And so I ended up working at a few Silicon Valley companies and startups. you know, it's like, I've got all this great UX training, you know, who wants good ideas about how to help users? And they're like, it's not really on our quarterly agenda. And plus I'm your boss, you know, I should really design this, not you, you know. So it's like a lot of the learning the real world skills, like personal skills and company politics. And, you know, I think it's similar to many people's stories, like Daphne, you talked earlier about, you know, her skills in architecture, but then, you know, your job is end up doing things you don't care that much about. And all the like creative stuff is just thrown under the bed for later. So a lot of my journey has just been like finding a way to properly channel those creative powers. So I also wanted to thank Dave for his story. He used the term walkabout, and that's something I feel like I'd been personally looking for, because I spent a lot of my 30s like leaving the tech world and going independent and just like working at a coffee shop and like interacting with real people again, because I was tired of living behind a screen and like not meeting my customers. So it's like I went through that whole walkabout phase into like, who am I as a designer and what do I want to be? And so I'm currently a solo consultant and freelancer. I've got one steady client, so it's giving me like an income stream to invest in my future. And then I just sort of stumbled upon autonomy through Mark Passio and the VIP Summit. And then I was like, you know, right thing at the right time. And then as I'm looking at it, it's like I could sort of just audit this course and like watch lectures and not doing anything. Or I realize it's like I have to invest myself and my energy to get what I need out of this course. Because I really like, you know, your whole, you could say pitch, or it's like an anti-pitch. It's like, don't come here if you want us to do everything for you, if you're scared of making changes. And I realized like I'm at that stage where I'm ready to like break out of orbit and like go be my own solar system. So that's what I'm here for.
Good. All right. So this one client, how did you get the client?
So I'm in an entrepreneur group. They talk about this concept of eat what you kill. It's like, you know, you've got to hunt for your food. Whereas this client was like, eat some roadkill. Like some car hit like this huge whale, which is giving me food for like a year, but I didn't. So I got it through my uncle, who's like, you know, in finance and all that. And he knew someone through Stanford in the Bay Area who's doing actually a construction management software. So I heard there's a few people in construction here. So I'm learning about that, but them and actually lots of companies need the sort of skills I learned, and they actually aren't well formally trained. So one of the things I want to do eventually is like, you know, teach more, help. Like if you think of the word user experience, like every business involves user or customer experience, right? And even the sales process is a form of user experience. It's like everything you do in life is like interacting with other people. But I got it through my uncle, but it wasn't just like any old job. It turned out I was the perfect fit for them, and I'm helping them grow. But it's so easy for me. This is why I didn't like 9 to 5. Like I can see what to do and just get it done. And then I don't want to sit at my cubicle 7 more hours, like not getting to go outside. And
I know it seems cruel and unusual, right? Okay. So
and that's like schooling, as you know.
It's okay that you got the lead from your uncle, because you got started, and that's the important part. And it's a good fit for the client. So now I'm seeking to understand, what does that client look like, and what are other clients like? What are the, how do we find more? And then what message do we send them to get you more leads? Because you've already done the hardest part.
Gotcha.
You already you got one client. Like once you get one client, you can get other clients, and it might be same thing, or it might be a little bit different. And then you got 3 or 4 different offers, and then you pick one eventually and say, we're just going to focus on this. But right now you're doing all the right things. And the walkabout phase probably helped you in your life to get situated.
Right. Unlike some of my, you know, colleagues in the industry, I became okay with surviving on like just the bare minimum, because nowadays with technology, you can get everything you need quite cheaply, as long as your costs, you know, if you have decent rent or all that. So it's like now I'm not wasting money on whatever lattes and sports cars and whatever, you know, I'm like, that's not my standard of living. But to answer your question, what I like about this course being more freedom minded is I think I've come to realize it's about finding the right clients with the right ethics. And it tends to be more smaller businesses that aren't taking VC funding. You know, they're actually, they have some mission behind them. And they, like I said, every company needs some amount of this type of work. And the engagement I want to work towards is like a set time up front, 4 to 8 weeks, where I'm helping them with their concept, you know, doing some groundwork to get everything in the right direction. For example, design a version 2 of their product. And that's what I'm good at. And then after that, move into like a retainer where, hey, I can come in and as you're building it, you know, make sure you know, that, or this engine, because I actually have an engineering background too. So I think that helps a lot. I'm good with talking to their developers and like getting around technical hurdles.
Yeah.
But
All
after
right, so
I've
let me
done
ask
that,
this question real quick. If I had a software product 1.0, 2.0, you could help me design a 3.0 that's better user interface friendly, right?
Right. And that would be, I would call that an incremental gain. What I can really offer is like more of like a 10x of like, what aren't you doing now for your users that your next product can do? Would Thanks for playing this again. This is really good advice, which will help me focus again this season.
You know, I actually watched a lot of your vlogs and a lot of your conversations. This one was very direct and, you know, it kind of summarized a lot of the other things you were discussing. And I thought this was, you know, it distilled a lot of things that were encapsulated in the beginning of your journey.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you. I guess we lost Ashley for now, but that's okay.
Yeah, she'll be right back. These things happen.
Yeah. Well, I can just respond to something Richard said there because, you know, what Richard did is the same skills he teaches us during autonomy, which is how to meet someone new, and through asking the right questions and listening intently and taking notes, right? He starts to guide me towards basically what I decide is good for me. Like he didn't
Mhm.
he didn't just listen and then say, okay, you need to do this offer and this timeline to this audience, but he helped me figure that out. And you know, basically like he took note of certain things I said and then called them out later, which I think most people in their average conversation, like I'd mentioned walkabout and he brings it up like 5 minutes later and ties it to a point. And that's just such a good skill set. Like it both gave me good advice there, but it shows how it really empowers us when we're meeting new leads or new potential clients or customers or business partners, like how to have good, productive conversations. Um, and he let me talk a lot, which is good. Sometimes Richard talks a lot, which is great because he has a lot to share. But I think I appreciated there because he was meeting me for the first time. Like he just let me go and I went off on a few tangents, but like that let me put the pieces together in my head for him to kind of bring it back around to a compelling point.
The active listening was pretty,
Yeah.
that skill was not only exhibited, you know, it was
Yeah.
inspiring.
And even like we can like it's kind of interesting. We have replays of all that. Like I just rewatched that, but probably other things I did in autonomy I can rewatch because I just got more nuggets from that. Because where I am today, there's still a bunch of that that's compelling, and I'm looking at changing my offer and how to target it. And
Mhm. Very cool.
Thank you for holding it down. I am back if we want to finish up the video. Does that work?
100%.
Great. Oh, I need to be host or co-host.
There you
how long's
go.
the video overall? Like 10 more minutes?
It's like in total, it was like 11 minutes.
Yeah, I think we have a
Okay.
little bit, like 5 minutes left or something
I
like that.
edited it down a little. Plus, we can edit it any way we want in here.
You know, that or this engine, because I actually have an engineering background too, so I think that helps a lot. I'm good with talking to their developers and like getting around technical hurdles.
Yeah.
But
All
after
right, so
I've
let me
done
ask
that,
this question real quick. If I had a software product 1.0, 2.0, you could
Yeah.
help me design a 3.0 that's better user interface friendly, right?
Right. And that would be, I would call that an incremental gain. What I can really offer is like more of like a 10x of like, what aren't you doing now for your users that your next product can do, which you've been constrained by your current barriers as to not being able to do before. Like taking that step back and looking at the lay of the land and saying, actually, we're going to chart a new course.
So I have a client in Sweden, and he has scheduling software for doctors, nurses, hospitals, first aid places, urgent care, these types of situations. I have a suspicion you could like look at something like that and help make substantial user interface and experience things that makes it easier for the people he's selling to use his software and get the value quicker, faster, easier, however it works out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And the thing I notice, it's like my customers just aren't noticing what their users deal with because they're in their own world.
Yes.
They're in spreadsheets and they're in meetings, and
Yeah.
they just don't talk to customers enough, and they can't think like their customers. And today or yesterday, recently Leah was presenting about her skill set, and you said she had these intangible qualities of like, she can see what to do and get it done. And that's sort of what I'm referring to here is like, I can go through people's software and say, here's where your users are probably falling off, you know? And it can be such small changes, but they all add up. And to the users, it means a lot. And that's sort of what they lose track of.
All right, cool. So now the part is you're in a meeting like that. And before you do that, you're going to learn to ask some questions, collect some preliminary data so that when you do identify that spot and you show them how much is going on right there, you attach it back to the numbers they gave you. And you'll say something like that equates to $2 million a month you guys are bleeding out.
Yeah.
Now, thus far, you seem to act like you can afford not to have a tourniquet. But if we did this and this to address this use case scenario, we'd be able to like bridge that gap, and you'd be stronger positioned against your competitors. And people might even pay for that additional feature functionality above and beyond the subscription. There's a whole bunch of things that can happen, but it takes you being there to see that and know what to do or options to do to triage that situation.
Thank you. I really like the skill you're talking about is just quantifying the offer, right? Because a lot of
that's
people,
how you can get paid. Because otherwise it's ephemeral and intangible and these sort of things. So knowing
designers
how to,
and probably lots of us, it's like we see the value to the people and we think that's enough, but it's like you need to quantify it. What's the value to the business?
Because what you'll learn is if we don't learn to do this for ourselves and have that conversation, and it's an awkward conversation when you don't know how to have it, but once you know how to have it, it's like totally natural. If we don't do that, we constantly depend on them to have the same vision in their head from what we understand, and they never do because they've never seen or they don't have the skills and experience. There is a gap there, and we need to fill that gap with narrative and story that relates back to tangible reality that can be checked and scrutinized and, you know, quality assurance, all this good stuff. So it's about that convection current. And most of us through schooling, we only had part of that convection current, and we can't make it all go around ourselves, and we wait for the other person to do it for us. And that leads to hunger and starvation. So knowing how to like close those loops and close those gaps with rhetorical skills, not in a way that's to compromise integrity.
All righty, and we are back. So, Karl, you were talking about you felt like watching this video back of yourself like gave you some new insight. So I want to get to that. And I know you talked a little bit about how you got into autonomy. You originally heard about it from Mark Passio. Is that correct? Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
And I mean, I can give you a bit more of a story if you want that, but yes, through specifically Mark Passio being on the VIP summit he skipped his podcast that week, so I watched the summit, and that's how I learned more. I knew of autonomy, but watching the summit and seeing the people in it and hearing them talk, and that was probably my introduction to Richard, who's sort of the core of the message. So that was my
Right.
introduction.
Yeah. So what would you say to somebody who said that why do you need autonomy? You're somebody that comes across as very intelligent, very accomplished, somebody who was successful at their career in Silicon Valley, somebody who had it all together. So why did you need autonomy?
Yeah, thank you. And yeah, I think in America specifically, like the definition of success is prescribed to you by default, but that makes a lot of people not reflect on what really matters to them. Like, how do they want to live their life? What will make them happy when they look back and say, it was all worth it. I did the things I wanted to do. And I've always been philosophical and I guess self-reflective. So I approach design through philosophy, but I approach my own life that way. And the thing is I want to use design to help others achieve the good life too. So I feel like I have a responsibility to discover what that is. And through the traditional career path, I've always felt when you're in a room of intelligent people, you should just be working together. And in certain, like I happened to go to a good graduate school and my grad program was like that. It was very stimulating. When I got into the work world, of course, it's very competitive, but you would expect companies to compete with each other. But I also felt like I was competing within my own company. Everyone's competing for the next promotion. And a lot of what I wanted to design was getting lost in that process. Like the user experience is just whatever comes out the other end of the business of the product and business processes. And basically a lot of that potential was being sacrificed by what I saw as these petty games for status, for money, the sort of American dream. And and I just wasn't happy with the typical 9 to 5 work situation. One, because I wasn't contributing what I knew I could contribute, and two, like when you have a boss, there's this implicit assumption that they always know better than you, right? Like there's never equal, like whenever I'd prove a point, even if it was tactfully, well, it's still up to my boss to accept it or not, and that depends on his personality. It doesn't depend on what's right or wrong or what's correct or incorrect. And I've never been great, or I hadn't prioritized the skills of influence and persuasion and and I guess I felt like it was more important to stand up for what I believed in. So, that led me to getting a lot of jobs. And then after a year or two being like, this doesn't feel like the right fit. It reminds me of someone who's like in chronic relationships and then they keep leaving them. But then the message sort of is, it's like, well, if every job is the same, maybe you're the issue. And, it made me think, well, maybe I'm not cut out for the default path. I personally don't think that's a good path. So maybe it's up to me to find a better way to live life. And, autonomy speaks a lot about schooling and how we're taught to think, or rather not think. I've always been inquisitive. And I guess what I realized is with autonomy, we're given the freedom and the tools to design our own life experience. We can go after opportunities that are lucrative or that we're skilled at. Or in my case, there's actually been a lot I haven't gone after because it would have taken a lot of my time or energy, or, a lot of that time I was living far away from my family. I grew up in Maryland. I'm back here now, but I was in California, I was in Germany, and just to come visit home, see the family for a day or two was days worth of effort, thousands of dollars. And, so I look at all that as exploration to find what was valuable to me. Now that I found that, autonomy helps me design my own lifestyle. And really, that's what freedom's for. It's not a place to stay at, it's a place to give you a blank piece of paper to create your ideal life.
Yeah, I really like that. And I like that you kind of talk about that it's designing it for you, right? So it's not a one size fits all. It is you coming in and sort of getting the lay of the land and figuring out what you personally need. So let's talk about what did you need? The course has it's a buffet, it's an amuse-bouche, it's whatever, an appetizer of so many different things. So, what part of the course did you find really resonated with you at that time? You were like, yes, this is hitting home for me.
Yeah, the course has a nice build. I think there's around 3 major sections. And the later one, enjoyed all of them, but a lot of the meat, it really set the stage. So when Richard does this on purpose, when you get the real meat of like you're doing elements of entrepreneurism, I think that was probably my favorite because I realized, well, if I'm going to be on my own, that means I'm my own business. I'm my own boss. I'm like my own employee and my own boss. This is a whole skill set I never learned. And yeah, I could figure it out by myself, but I don't have another 10, 20 years to waste on trial and error. So Richard was someone I looked up to as someone who I'd felt achieved success, but not only success, but ethical success, being a whistleblower and then using the skills and then coming and teaching others like us who can go on to inspire many more people. But I think the core of it, my own definition of success, like there's so much available to us these days, not just like public libraries, but the whole, like almost the whole internet's free. Um, we live in this era of abundance. I don't think you need a 100-room mansion to be happy. It's really like how to pare down the choices, and developing skills does that. But specifically for me, learning how to generate income without being subject to authority, like to a company which has their own interests, to a boss who has their own personality. Um, that's really what the best, I won't say the best thing, but that's the most practical thing. And that's kind of what I needed most.
Yeah, and I think that makes a lot of sense too, and to not use the term the best thing, because there is a lot of subjects that are touched on, and I feel like you kind of get what you need in that season, but then you come back and something else resonates with you in a different way. So it's always this ebb and flow in that regard, I think. So what is the biggest life change that you made since kind of joining autonomy and maybe like inspired by autonomy? Obviously, being your own boss is a pretty big change.
Yeah, thank you. Well, and that's interesting. Maybe that's why I say one thing I've learned in my various studies is like life has 3 main resources, right? You've got money, and that's one thing you need. You also need energy. And then the last one is time, because we're all limited by time. Um, so it's like earning money is part of my life, but I've now learned how to balance it with my physical health and planning my time throughout the day. Um, a big value I get from autonomy is the community. You know, like I mentioned, I had a great graduate program, but then we all left after, and it was very hard to stay connected. Whereas autonomy, your community stays with you, and just meeting other like-minded people, getting to practice the skills, but then, everyone you meet, they're sort of vetted for like someone who cares, who wants to do good, who's intelligent and eager to learn. Um, it's hard to find a good community anymore because a lot of us are disconnected.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. The community is such a key piece of the journey.
Yes, and so you asked the biggest lifestyle change, and yeah, that goes into sort of the origin story. Is I was in Austin for South by Southwest, where I'd given a talk while I worked at eBay long ago, and I hadn't been back. So since I was my own boss, like I just booked a trip to Austin. And it's like I ended up barely going to the conference because the conference, one, you can watch the talks online at like 1.5x speed without having to stand in line. And two, a lot of the people there are just in that 9 to 5 mindset and not necessarily trying to build someone. But I'd given myself like a whole week of like empty time. And that's when, as soon as I got to that Airbnb, I was like, I need to just sit down and figure out what I want to do with my life. And then that's like the day I found autonomy in the VIP summit, and I like signed up the next day. And really since then, it's been every day is like, what do I want to design in my life and how can I start to do it? And that is a long process. But when I look at my initial videos, like my vlogs of before I started or that first meeting with Richard, I see that just those simple mindset changes of I used to be so easily shut down by, well, the boss says you can't do that. And now I have skills of influence and persuasion and presenting my arguments better and understanding value propositions and speaking their language. And before, I really just had this employee mindset of having to ask permission. And yeah, I think people who rise in the corporate world like don't get stuck there. But the people who were good at school, they were good at passing tests, really end up getting stuck there because they think, well, I've got to ask teacher and like I have to do what's on the test. So breaking out of that was definitely the biggest lifestyle change for me.
Yeah, and it's interesting. So sometimes it's hard to quantify a these mental shifts that we make, but they add up. They become so significant in our day-to-day life. Just like you said, like changing from being like, oh, okay, I'm just going to accept what you say, to now totally like thinking about how you're going to reformulate or how you're going to approach this problem, and you're not giving up anymore. So that can sound simple when it's one interaction, but whenever you're actively advocating for yourself and things that you believe in and your ideas on a consistent basis, that's huge. It's an absolutely huge change.
Yeah, and that makes me just self-reflect that one of the characteristics you build from autonomy is self-confidence. Whereas I sort of had this, even though I didn't personally believe it, I felt a bit subservient when I had a boss of like, I can't question his authority. Whereas now I don't have that mentality of it's just another person and we can discuss an issue. And yes, there's various roles and whatnot involved, but really not identifying myself as I am an employee, right? That part's gone because I have the confidence to just be my own person.
Yeah, that's huge. That's very, very special. So let's talk about challenges. Whenever I mean, you've gone through all kinds of stuff in Silicon Valley or in San Francisco and master's program at a really high level school. So what did you find challenging, or did you find anything challenging about the course?
Um, well, it's interesting because a lot of it, I wouldn't say it's necessarily people skills, but it's skills that involve interacting with other people. It's not just a math problem I can sit down and just figure out or focus on. One of the first exercises you do is just meeting other classmates and scheduling some time to do a mini get to know you interview. Just practice having directed conversations and listening. And I don't know, like I did a bunch of those, but really, and this season, hopefully I'll do more, but um this idea of like flinching, like I was definitely flinching around the idea of schedule, like filling my calendar with meetings of a bunch of people I don't know. And then as an introvert, it's like you need to control your energy. So when I schedule a meeting, or let's say there was like multiple hours, and then I'll think about the time of day, and it's like, well, what if I'm not energetic? And then I'll sound really lame, or I won't have anything to say. So I think it's always the small thing. It's this, like when you do a new exercise, there's always these small muscles. Like, why does this spot hurt? It's because you just haven't used it, right? Even if it's a small muscle. Um, what's that phrase in the Matrix? Like, you've never used your muscle, right? You were just in a pod this whole time. You've never used your real potential.
Yeah.
So I think one was, yeah, pacing myself. I wanted to start off really fast, but the course starts a bit slow. Um, but what they do teach is organizational skills. So yeah, I grew so much, but there's always more you can learn. And I do martial arts too, and I've been doing that 4 years. And it's not like I quit martial arts because, oh, I did that and now I'm done. Same thing with autonomy. There's more skill. I can develop a new level of each of those skills. But yeah, it's funny, like just talking to people and I mentioned do it live, or I think I mentioned that, but just like just like this, like getting up and showing up on camera and talking, doing interviews or meeting people. Like, but this is what I would do with clients, and this is what I would do if I were giving a talk. And if I want to be an independent consultant or a thought leader, what I can't think of what the right term is, like you need to get comfortable talking to people, being on screen and being extemporaneous. And so it's challenging, but autonomy forces you to do those things, which like your mom or your best friend might not make you do, right? You need someone to push you through those hurdles or over
Right.
them.
In an accountability way, because nothing is required, right? However, if you want to get the most out of your experience, then doing those things and doing the things that we are intimidated by, doing the things that even as, like academically, maybe you weren't intimidated at all. However, there's still the element of challenge, right? In getting over some of your introverted nature and reaching out and connecting with people because it does require energy. It's like an emotional, mental energy to talk and have these conversations with people when you naturally are an extrovert. So it's certainly a challenging exercise. So I wanted to ask you, so do you feel that your skills, you know, what benefit did it do to you to like make yourself do the interview? So even if you felt a little, I would
Mhm.
rather not do this, like what benefit did you get from that?
Well, I think it's the exact same as, and this might only resonate with introverts, and maybe there's an appropriate extrovert analogy, but it's sort of like, let's say it's Tuesday, someone invites you to a party on Friday night. Okay, great. Yeah, sounds good. And then, it gets to Friday and you're finished work and you're kind of tired and maybe a show's on or it's raining and you're like, "Oh, there's this party tonight. It's probably going to be fun, but if to show up, I'd have to like get dressed and do all this work and then what if it sucks? I will have wasted my whole." So like you start coming up with all these excuses and rationalizations, but every time you get there, like one, it's generally a lot better than you expected, and two, you're generally just glad you showed up for yourself. I don't know why that is. Like, why does the same person get anxious but then is satisfied when you ignore yourself?
Yeah.
Um, and maybe that's one of those muscles to build. I think it's what Richard might have mentioned in the clip. It's like just getting used to showing up for yourself and not like if you make a commitment, you should do it because you're going to feel good when you do. And you don't like not only would the other party be disappointed if you don't show up, but you'll start to lose your own confidence because you're telling yourself you can't do it when really you can, unless you had an accident or some horrible situation. You can do it. So why not? But it is challenging, and that's why guides are available.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so what was surprising to you about autonomy?
Well, I think yeah, and as you were saying some things, this recurring theme came up of like autonomy is exactly what you make of it because nobody's dragging you through. And that's part of the skill set you're being taught is, hey, once the slave master's gone and you uh you still have to decide what you want to do with your freedom, right? And you could just stay in bed all day until you get thrown out of your house. I don't know. Or, there's many ways to use time wisely and to use time not wisely. So what surprised me was really the amount of initiative I could take. Because I think the reason courses, if you look, like everybody's got a course to sell, and I've bought a lot of them, and they sound great, and you pay a few $100 or something. There's a really long sales pitch. Wow, that's so amazing. And then you put in your credit card, and it's like, okay, here's some videos, and it's just like that you're not interacting with the teacher. There's no community. Uh, there's some information there, but realistically, you could have just found the information somewhere else. It's like, what did I really pay for? But in autonomy, like there's that information, but then there's like this gymnasium of like exercises and potential. So, like I mentioned, do it live as a simple example. Like most people haven't gotten to host their own podcast. Well, autonomy has one set up where you can just guest host it and you can experience what that's like. And that gives you ideas for it builds your confidence and it lets you bring out your creativity and you get feedback. Like Hannah and I got so much positive feedback. And then like I was working on a presentation, so I did that during Do It Live and I got feedback on the presentation. And there's always something more you can do. But I guess what surprised me, it's like what I could bring to it, where yeah, I could just sit there and wait for Richard to tell us to do something. But I noticed the more I stepped up, the more I got out of it. And that's the lesson to learn, because when you do that without being told to do it, you build that confidence that you can learn new things and eventually succeed at them.
Yeah, I love that. So let's talk about vlogging. You participated in the vlogging program, right? And I wanted you to tell us a little bit about that. And also, was that intimidating? Because I myself have thought a lot about doing the vlogging, but I'm like, it's a video of me. I don't know if I can do it. So just tell us about that experience and what was hard about it, what you learned from it.
Thank you. The vlogging was definitely my favorite thing. And I guess in two ways. One, because it turned out to be easy for me. Because you know how like listening is such a powerful skill set. Well, when you're vlogging, you have this like thing that's just listening to you. It's not going to interrupt you, tell you you're stupid. And autonomy community members aren't going to say that was a dumb vlog. Why'd you say that? Why were you wearing that? Um, I just got so much positive feedback, and I realized that format is one where it's a little bit like this. This is more two-way, but I noticed just thinking out loud, I was able to come up with lots of new ideas, which I wouldn't have just sitting inside alone, staring at the wall. Something about talking things out really works for me. And I just had a routine where every Tuesday I'd go out for lunch, and on Main Street there was a table nearby, and that's where I'd film the vlog. And so I made it a positive ritual, and it helped me think through every week's lessons. And because, think of a college lecture, like you can write down what the lecturer says, but you really have to integrate it and make it work for yourself. So the vlog gave me a chance to like think in my own words, how am I going to apply this? Or what am I struggling with this week? Or what idea did I have? Um, and it simultaneously made me feel like I'm participating in the course just by sitting at a table, filming a video, posting it in the forum, and then other people, if they're so inclined, can watch it and comment on it. Like it was a bit magical, actually.
Yeah, that's awesome. So, did you end up going back and kind of reflecting through your journey after you finished your season?
Well, at the very end, I did a graduation interview with Kara, and I forget if it was during the interview or because we had a sort of accountability coach who I was working with. I think at the very end of that, I looked through all my meeting notes for the season and summed that up. That was really helpful. But yeah, I was gonna say because we were going through some of my vlogs in preparation for this, and some of them I kind of don't like to watch because like I've often evolved my thinking since I recorded something, and I want to be like, no, don't listen to that guy, or I'm not that dumb anymore. But I mentioned that to Richard the other day, and he said, well, that's one of the skills that's getting used to seeing yourself on screen or in a video, and just realizing that's the same thing as showing up in real life and just having a conversation. Um, so I think I probably, well, this is the bigger question for me because I do generate a lot of ideas, but I often don't sit down and consolidate them. So maybe that's something I should do. I'm definitely glad they're there for me to look at, and I'm doing it again this season as well.
Nice. Well, maybe I will, maybe this can be an agreement between us, and maybe this could be my commitment to do the vlog because I
Oh yeah.
feel interested in it, but a little intimidated. So maybe I'll do that. And I do want to save some time for interaction before we end today, but I did want to ask you, what advice do you have for people that are considering joining autonomy?
Yes. For the new students who've already signed up, my message to them was to pick something tangible you want to accomplish this season, whether it's getting a client, building a website, learning a new skill. I think it really works well to have something you're personally working on as you listen to the lectures. Of course, you could just watch the lectures and take notes and learn about entrepreneurship, but the goal is really to practice it. And even if it's a hobby or something on the side, get your hands dirty. And picking something like that will help you focus so that you don't, there's a million things you could be doing in autonomy, but pick something you'll be happy you built by the end of it. And for those still considering, I think it comes down to what's your personal definition of success? Are you currently on track for that? If you fast forward 10 or 20 years, do you see yourself in a place you'll be happy with, or are you at a bit of a fork in the road where this decision could really pay off? Maybe it's going to require some effort to change, but it'll lead you in a more satisfying direction. And I think for me, you know, we're at this state of the world where nobody knows what the future holds. And I'm personally happy to be with a group of ethically minded, freedom oriented people who are smart. They're all around the world, got all these skill sets. It's both a support network, but it's like, I want to be on a team fighting for something that's right and that's good. And yeah, to me, that's more important than playing the typical game and being with people I don't resonate with as much.
Yeah. That's awesome, Karl. So I do want to open it up to, just the chat here, but I do want to thank you so much for agreeing to do this with me. I have really enjoyed having the time with you and getting more insight into your autonomy journey. I feel like I need to set up a call with you to chat more, but I've really enjoyed it. Thank you so much.
You're welcome, Ashley. It's been nice talking to you, and I got to know you a little bit through some of the sales exercises in autonomy and look forward to talking with you more.
Yeah, I was glad when you showed up, you gave great feedback and you were always supportive and you had real action items, on how to improve. So I appreciated that. It was very good feedback. All right, we're going to open it up. Does anybody have any questions, comments?
You can either raise your hand or just jump in. that was a big thing in autonomy. Like since I started, is Richard did the jump in thing, but someone started the raise hand thing, and all the introverts like the raise hand button, so they'll all do that.
Yeah, I have a question. Well, sort of maybe like just asking for your insights. So a lot of times people will have the misperception that those who join autonomy are looking for their path in life, whereas there are many people like yourself who completely are walking their path in life, yet they chose to come to autonomy to learn other things. You've gone to the best colleges in the world, yet here you are at autonomy. Could you give me some insight on that dichotomy that maybe people are questioning?
Yeah, thank you. Well, I did have a thought about that. Maybe I'll have a few more, but one thing that became clear to me is I didn't want to only know one thing. Um, like basically in my career path, I was a UX guy and I was dependent on getting hired for that exact role at certain companies with that exact need. As I looked towards the future and I saw, uncertainty, and I was thinking more than just in my career, I realized I wanted to be a more well-rounded type of person, someone who could thrive or find opportunity in any situation. Like if there's some terrible natural disaster, nobody cares, and I don't care about designing UX for an app, right? I need to know survival skills. I need to have a community. I need to, just have more real world skills. And I, I I think I realized I wanted more out of life than just like a narrow specialization, but that broad skill set could still be applied with the skills I already have to unlock new opportunities and to use that skill in a way that gave me the freedom and lifestyle I wanted. So right, like every business needs a product, but it also needs someone running the business. So I sort of had the product and I learned how to market myself as a business too. And that's the part I lacked. And that's what
So
kept me kind
it
of,
became, yeah, multifaceted. So in addition to finding new skills that you may not have gone after or learned or been exposed to, you took what you had and uh,
growing.
you enriched that.
Yeah, Richard and his interview with John Taylor Gatto mentions like the liberal arts skills taught at elite schools. Um, I guess I realized, if and when I have a family someday, I want to pass them down useful life skills, right? Like autonomy is just like a lot of those useful general principles, how to learn a skill, how to talk to people, how to create opportunity and find value. Those were things I just didn't get in my kind of state schooling because yeah, I went to a nice grad school. Before that, I was just state schools. But the skills of freedom basically weren't really taught in school.
Thank you.
And it is just to reflect like imagination is such a big part of our lives, and most of us aren't really encouraged to imagine what we could do with our life, right? Like if someone gave you a blank piece of paper and said, draw exactly what you want to do with the rest of your life, it's very overwhelming. I have trouble with that. But the more we realize we can create our futures, the more we actually can. But if you never try, you never will.
And manifestation isn't just wishing really hard. It's learning how to do it, learning the skills, the tools, and getting the organization together.
Yeah, for sure. I have to, I mean, it's like you have to know what you're manifesting, but you still have to do it. Like you can't be wishing for someone else to do it. That's kind of silly. But I think like autonomy means like self-sufficient. And that's just a principle I resonate with a lot. I read the Transcendentalists like Henry David Thoreau and Ralph Waldo Emerson, like the New England rugged individualists. So I guess I've been interested in individualism, libertarianism, so to speak. But that requires having skills for yourself, but then knowing how to collaborate with others. And yeah, I'm more interested in a creative future where individuals are empowered than in a few large organizations where everyone's just kind of a hamster in a wheel, making a little more voltage for the for uh for the machine.
Have you found that team in autonomy? Have you found that community or those ideals that you are a part of?
Yeah, it's kind of like a switchboard where each person is like a connection to their entire network, right? So it's not like autonomy doesn't yet have tens of thousands of people, but through the people in autonomy, I have access to tens of thousands of people where the more I work that network, the more opportunities I get. It's, but it really is like no one's going to come knocking at my door really and say, hey, here's a perfectly scoped opportunity and here's a check and just do this. But it does give me the field and the potential to get to know others, to be a presence, and just to make myself valuable and find opportunities and find connections. But like any online tool, you need to show up and it's so valuable. It's so rewarding too. There's definitely not another community I've found or heard of like this. And everyone says like that's the real selling point, but you kind of don't experience it until you join. But I like to say it's a college or a country club where um at least for now, you join once and you can keep coming back as much as you want. And that's just a nice benefit.
Isn't it really reassuring to know that if you refer people who are in autonomy as a colleague, that it's going to be a really solid referral?
Yeah, you mean refer someone if I
Yes,
refer someone to join or someone I already has
in
joined?
business,
Yeah, yeah.
in something, right? Here's my colleague, they're in autonomy with me, and the vetting is done.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess I was just thinking like I was in Seattle last summer and I met up with Elise Skiba, who's another designer I met on autonomy, and we talked for hours. And it's just like everyone you meet in this program is such an interesting person. And it really does open up. And I've met Leah as well and probably others. But you know, you really have to be proactive in this day and age to build a network of the type of people you want to be around and the type of people you want to grow with and interact with. Because it's not really done for you anymore. And it's kind of hard to find too.
Yes, thank you.
All righty. Oh, Stephen, did you want to say something?
Nope. Thank you.
All righty. Well, we're getting close to lecture time, so I'm going to go ahead and end it if we're all good here. Karl, thank you so much for the amazing interview. This was really, really good. I loved hearing your insight and really appreciate your time.
Yeah, my pleasure, Ashley. And one other thing I remembered about autonomy is the mastermind groups both help you with accountability and goal tracking, and that was an area I really thrived in. So there's so many resources in the program once you get in, and it's really just about finding the way it can work for you best.
100%. Thank you so much. Thank you for all of our autonomy family who have joined us on this call. I really appreciate you all too. And I will look forward to seeing you a little bit later. Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.